How's it going, everybody? Andrew here with AROG. Today we are going to build a PC, but first we're going to harvest some parts from this guy. So let's do that. Stick around, this is going to be fun. Okay, so the first thing that we need to take out is the CPU and the M.2 Nvme SSD out of this build so that we can put it in the new computer that's going to replace this sort of functional tower. Right now you'll notice all screens are working, so you're like, yeah, the PC works, but it kind of does, it kind of doesn't. See my previous video for details about that. But we're going to pull the 2700X, the Ryzen 7 2700X out of this machine. And we are going to pull the M.2 Nvme with the newly installed OS on it out of this machine, and a couple other things, some RAM, some Samsung B-die, and we're going to pop it into this new case, so stick around. So the first thing we're going to do is harvest some parts from this beast. We're going to get this 2700X out of here. Take this 360 AIO out. So we've got all the screws out. Now we're going to pull the cold plate off of the CPU gently. And the CPU is warm because this computer was just unplugged a few moments ago. We can gently twist to break free the seal so we don't pull our Ryzen processor out with our cooler. AMD problems. So now we have the AIO successfully taken off of the 2700X, and I've cleaned the thermal paste off of this and kind of cleaned it off of that as well. And now we're just going to pop this CPU out of here. It's kind of hard to do when you can't see. I'm looking through the camera, and boom, 2700X, just like that. Be ashamed if I dropped it. Not gonna happen. And just like that, CPU out. Next up, Nvme M.2 SSD. We have our Ryzen 7 2700X, our crucial P2 M.2 Nvme SSD, and our EVGA 750G2 80+ gold power supply. This is all we need out of the old build to move forward with the new one. Here we go. I want to give a huge shout out to our Patreons. Thank you so much, our Patreon supporters. If it weren't for you, we couldn't do any of this, so thank you very much. This is the Corsair 4000D Airflow Edition. This is the case that we're going to be building in today. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun. This is the Asus ROG Strix X470-F gaming motherboard. This is the board we're going to be building with today. We're going to pop this into that Corsair 4000D Airflow with the Ryzen 7 2700X and the EVGA XC3 Ultra RTX 3070. Oh yeah, baby. This case actually comes with 2 Corsair fans pre-fitted, but we're going to take those out for the purposes of this build. So those are going to come out. We don't want to use this stock fan. We're just going to take all 4 of these out. We're just going to pop off this front cover so we can get to that front fan and take it out. Remove the dust cover, dust filter. Corsair has gone for the yellow and black aesthetic. They've really kind of pushed that on this case, and it works in most cases. It really looks nice in the USB there. I do wish there was more I/O on the front. The cable tray, the help is nice. I will say it's definitely good for cable management. All in all, just a very clean case, great airflow. Not much bad to say about this case, except for the fact that, you know, it has limited radiator mounting capabilities. Up top you can only fit a 280 max, and that's iffy. Corsair has done some very interesting things with this case. I like the yellow accents on the thumb screws, and an interesting thing about the way the panels on this case go on, the thumb screws really are only there as a secondary measure. These panels snap on and off, and I'll show you what I mean real fast, if you'll bear with me. I'll give it a tug, and then the side panel just comes off. Let me get the focus here. Aside from some great onboard audio, I could give you about 100 different reasons why the X470 Strix is a pretty solid board for the 2700X and the RTX 3070. It's got a great upgrade path, among other things, solid VRM, plenty of room for upgrading the memory, plenty of RGB if that's your thing. You know, this is just a pretty board aesthetically. Of course, we went with the Wraith Prism. This is a temporary cooling solution, as we mentioned before, but it's going to do the job and keep our processor cool until we get what it is that we're going to put on there permanently. This is the 1 terabyte SSD that's going to hold most of our things. We're going to try this out. This is actually new for me. This is a Wi-Fi Bluetooth card. We're going to give this a shot. I don't know how well it's going to work, but it was cheap, and it was on Amazon, and it was available quickly, so we're going to give it a shot together and see how it works. I'll let you know in a future video. For the RAM, we went with the G.Skill Trident Z RGB 3200 CL14. This is a B-die kit as well. The FlareX kit that was in the old tower is going to stay in there for now because I don't feel like pulling the radiator out. But this will do just fine. This is 16 gigabyte kits, 2x8. And now for the coup de grace. With Ryzen, you can either line up the arrows, or you can just know that it goes this way. You see how wherever the hinge is on the lever, that's the top of the word Ryzen. None of them are printed any differently. This lever right here, where the hinge is, that's the top. People tell you to look for the little gold arrow, which is fine. It's right here on the corner. But yeah, Ryzen always goes toward the top of the socket. It's not complicated. Zero insertion force, as you probably already know. But if you don't, with AM4 socket, you just drop it in and then you slide this down and close it. Now, one thing I do that a lot of people may or may not do, let me make sure you can see this. Not really applying any weight. I'm just making sure that it doesn't slide out any as I pop the lever down. Now, that's something that I've learned to do over time, because in the past I've had processors that weren't seated properly. So just something to keep in mind. Now, the AMD Wraith Prism, and all AMD stock coolers for that matter, come with thermal paste already applied to the base of the coolers. But now while this is thermally fine, it's basically glue. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but it's well, I'll just touch it. Do you see this? Thermal paste. I shouldn't be able to rub my finger across thermal paste and not have much on my finger, like That's crazy. I'm putting a lot of force on that. So if that does that to my finger, when that gets hot, what do you think that's gonna do on your CPU? It's gonna glue to it. This is why people pull their processors out of their motherboard all the time, because for some ungodly reason, AMD still insists on using this glue for their stock coolers. So, you know, I love Ryzen, but the thermal adhesive, frankly, that you guys ship with your coolers is terrible. You know, great CPU, great stock cooler for being a stock cooler. The paste, I'm gonna wipe that off. We're gonna put some thermal Grizzly on here, or some Gelid GC Extreme, because yuck. Let's try this with some like actual paste. Oh no, that's too much. It's fine. That is a little too much, but it's actually fine. And that is Thermal Grizzly Kryonaut. In case you're wondering, that's really good thermal paste. I use Gelid GC Extreme is almost just as good, and it's usually cheaper for me, so I can usually get like a 3-gram tube of the Gelid GC Extreme for about the same price as 1 gram of the Kryonaut. But Thermal Grizzly Kryonaut is just awesome stuff. It's hard to knock it. I definitely use it. So we're gonna go ahead and pop that Wraith Prism on here next. Yeah, that's definitely better than that stock stuff. Let's try this again. This is always a pain in the butt. I can hear the peanut gallery now. That's not how you're supposed to do it. It's on there, isn't it? Now, these Wraith Prisms actually have a little give. They will twist a bit. So one thing I like to do is kind of eyeball that and make sure that looks pretty straight when I tighten it down with the latch. And that is secure. Prism installed. Next, we'll remove the heat sink for the M.2 Nvme and install that. As you can see, there are just 2 little screws that hold this on. We're going to go ahead and remove this. And that allows us access to the heat shield, or the heat sink, for the top slot of the M.2 Nvme. And then we're just going to take this other screw out, and then we'll remove this heat shield for this top slot, like so. And now you see we have access to the top slot, top NVMe M.2 slot. And then we're just going to take our P2 Crucial M.2 that has Windows already installed on it from our other machine that we harvested it from. And we're going to place it into this top slot. We just pop this in here until we'll feel a little bit of a kind of a click. And just like that, that's pretty much it for M.2 installation. We just need to push this down and then put the screw in it. So let's do that. So let's tighten down this screw, and our M.2 is now installed and in place. Now we just have to put the heat shields back on in the reverse order that we took them off. This is going to be a temporary cooling solution. Eventually we're going to go back in with probably either like a Noct or a Chromax or another AIO. maybe even a custom cooling solution. The sky's the limit. You got any ideas, throw them down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. The next thing we have to do is pop the motherboard in, and what's great about this board is that it does not have an I/O shield that I have to put into the case back here. That could be a pain in the butt, and sometimes people forget them, frankly. So the X470-F Strix has an integrated I/O shield, which is pretty handy. So let's go ahead and pop that board in here. So all you want to do is just take your board and slide it into place. Well, not slide it, but carefully place it in the correct location. Careful not to drag it. It's very difficult to line up when you're trying to look through the camera and at the computer, but I think we may have accidentally installed it correctly. Let's see. Yeah, look, Mom, one hand. Okay, so these fans in particular run off this hub right here. I guess it's GIM. I've used them before, but not these particular fans. Now, this is gonna be a divisive one. You're gonna hate or love these things. I've never used them before, and I'm using them because I have them. And that is the only reason I'm using them, because I have them. Okay, so we've got our front panel connectors installed at this point. We've got a little sneak peek at what the cabling is going to look like. If you look at the top left, you'll see the CPU wires. And it's about time to populate the DIMM slots. For right now, we're gonna pop in 16 gigabytes of Trident Z RGB. This is a 3200 CL14 Samsung B die. This is a 16 gigabyte kit I'm gonna throw in here for right now. I'm actually later going to put 16 more gigabytes of FlareX in with this. I know that's not typical, and I know that you hear a lot of things about mixing RAM being bad. This is an example of one of the exclusions to that, where it actually works really well, and it's because they both have the same XMP profile, and they're both Samsung B die, and both kits are 3200 CL14 G.Skill, so they have a lot of specs in common, even though one is a Trident Z RGB kit and the other one is a FlareX kit, and they are technically different revisions even, and I'll go into that more in a future video. But the next thing up is to install the RAM. Went ahead and tossed the power supply in there, and after I get the RAM in the DIMM slots, it's time for you know what, and we'll get that out here in just a minute. So stay tuned, stick around. We want to make sure that our slot is open. We've removed the two channels. I do believe we are well on our way to a finished computer. Definitely want to give credit where it's due. The cable management on this case is pretty decent. The channel that they include on this 4000D really does help a lot. And they also give you some extra straps that you can use. All in all, just a really pleasant building experience. I'm not completely finished up, but we're getting there. You know, we've got some cable management in the Corsair 4000D. And what's great is when this is done, all I gotta do is just pop the side panel back on. It doesn't have to slide on, it just pops on. You see these 4 little holes? Hole, hole, hole. So thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It would mean the world to us. I'd like to give a special shout out to our patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Without you, I couldn't do any of the work that I do. I just wouldn't be able to do it. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Again, this is Andrew with AREG signing off.